Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I, man, here from the Block Runner, and today we're going to be talking about the big news from Visa. So it looks like Visa is accepting USDC now for their partners.
Yeah. So explain to me, Will, is
Yeah.
as
So
well as you can the implications of this.
yeah. So
You know.
let me just like summarize in like the simplest terms as to what transpired here. So Visa has a bunch of partners that are dealing in crypto, and those partners end up with USDC on their hands, and they have bills to pay, and those bills tend to go towards Visa as one of those payments, right? And
Yeah.
so all these partners are saying, "Hey, Visa, this is a stable coin. It's called USDC. Just accept it," right? Instead of us converting into a fiat equivalent, getting all those fees, and then sending you the fiat. Because think about it, you have to go from USDC to fiat, which means you have to send that to a bank, and then the bank has to then transfer that to Visa, and then there's all those fees in between. So instead, these partners are like, well, we could just send you the USDC and like get rid of all this hassle. And so
Mhm.
Visa was like, okay, sure, and that's it. That's the big takeaway here.
So what was preventing them from doing that in the first place? Just like the the non-realization of the security of the cryptocurrency itself. Like,
Yeah,
they understood the value as far as like the demand was there for these transactions to occur, but
sure.
maybe they didn't want to commit to actually like developing or integrating with the current infrastructure to facilitate this what they're talking about today, right?
I mean, if you follow the timeline of things, just recently the SEC gave Ethereum a whitelisted approval of not being a security token.
Mm,
And so that was the first domino to fall, and which allows things like Visa starting to accept Ethereum based assets, right? Like USDC. So USDC came from Coinbase and a company called Circle as a consortium. So they're co-developing the stable coin and stabilizing it, right?
mm,
So I think it was a number of things from Visa's perspective to accept USDCs. Like you have to trust that USDC is backed one for one, and so of course they had to do a ton of research and really understand the concept of cryptocurrency. So now that they accept it, it's like, well, what other dominoes do we see falling in the future as a result of Visa getting into cryptocurrency? So that's really what we're wanting to talk about today.
yeah. So this is just another one of the catalysts that we were kind of anticipating. We've seen a bunch of them already at this point. Elon Musk being all in, Tesla now being accepted,
Yeah.
as a, or no, Bitcoin being accepted as like a purchasing option for people wanting to buy Teslas. These are all catalysts, right? Now we're seeing this big one. Like largely Ethereum has been left out of the catalyst pool of news, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's been wondering, like, yo, Elon, where's your Ethereum endorsement? I guess recently he said DeFi or something
Yeah.
like that. So
This is don't
that's
defy DeFi.
yeah, so that's as close as we're gonna get. But
Yeah.
now we've got this Visa kind of like nod of approval, at least. At least to me, this signals the beginning of them committing to understanding how to service their already ubiquitous user base, like how to give them that access to these crypto uh, payment infrastructure.
Yeah, so before we get into the speculative asset, I want to read this one part in this article, right? So all the links will be in the description, but it says the existing settlement process requires Visa's business partners to settle transactions in fiat currency that the company accepts, meaning part of the partner's crypto treasury reserves would have to be converted at an additional cost of the conversion rate. With the
Mhm.
upgrade, Visa's partners will soon be able to settle their obligations with the company directly in USDC. So, like I said, to convert USDC to fiat has to touch a bunch of hands, and all those hands are taking a little off the top every single transaction. So this is like a direct payment to Visa, and that's what I guess elicited this run up in Bitcoin's price today, roughly 8%,
And ETH, right? I
and
mean,
ETH. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, this is more big news for ETH, if anything. I don't necessarily know. I think we're probably gonna end up titling this video something about like why we think ETH is severely undervalued. It seems to be for some whatever reason still being overshadowed by Bitcoin. I guess because the mainstream are starting to understand the value proposition of Bitcoin, but I guess it's going to take a little bit longer to understand what Ethereum is and what it does, the
Sure.
value it present to like society. But once these things click, I think, I don't know, there's a lot more upside to Ethereum. It seems to be way more undervalued today, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. Ethereum underpins the whole DeFi and potentially financial 2.0 system of the future.
Exactly.
And at $1,800, I mean, this is probably only the beginning, right? It's still gonna go through its ups and downs, right? But
Yeah.
you
So
know,
theoretically, Bitcoin could just be like a part of that that finance 2.0 ecosystem you're talking about,
yeah,
right?
for sure.
So I mean, wouldn't you expect like the financial ecosystem as a whole to outvalue just one of the assets that exists within it, like the Bitcoin asset itself,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is Ethereum has far more use cases than what Bitcoin would have,
Yeah.
right? Bitcoin is more like maybe like a communication layer between countries, if you will, with financial transactions. But that has like a very narrow use case. Only let's say Bitcoin is so valuable that countries start trading, communicating with each other in Bitcoin. But Ethereum has far more use cases, right? You could use Ethereum to do a transaction to get coffee, to like staking and NFTs and like all these like infinite use cases. So yeah, I would say Ethereum is probably way more useful and way more valuable than Bitcoin. But Bitcoin has a very specific and important use case. And I would think it's hard to think of a scenario where Ethereum flips Bitcoin, but it's very possible.
So why do you think it's hard to imagine then? Like if if we make comparables to what exists in traditional finance, we're saying Bitcoin is it's going to be a global reserve asset, I guess, similar to gold,
Yeah,
right?
so that's the main reason why I think Ethereum would be it'd be a difficult thing to occur for Ethereum to flip Bitcoin, because I think Bitcoin could be the world reserve currency.
Yeah, but there's bigger markets than just that, right? That exists. You said Ethereum is finance 2.0.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think Bitcoin is more of like it's the underlying value of financial transactions. It is the first foundational piece of finance, right, for
Mhm,
the future, right? So
mhm.
I think that elicits it being more valuable than Ethereum's use case, which is pretty much everything else.
Yeah, everything else. That's a lot of else, dude.
Yeah, but
The thing about Ethereum is I think Ethereum is going to have much tougher time.
think about the US dollar. There's how many trillions of US value out there? How many trillions of US? So replace the how many trillions of US dollars with its equivalent value in Bitcoin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a market that's going to supersede that value, because you start with that value first and then you put markets on top of it.
That's true, but I mean that's kind of what stable currencies are for.
Yeah.
DAI is not dependent on the valuation of Bitcoin. In order for DeFi to exist, DeFi is doing just fine without any knowledge of Bitcoin's existence.
Hmm.
The stable coin is not pegged to the value of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, but not yet. Not
Not yet.
yet.
Yeah, true,
But once
but
it will, then the valuation of Bitcoin just blows, just like explodes, dude. It's like a nuke. It's a financial nuke.
yeah. So you don't think it's possible for Ethereum to ever be perceived as like a much so one reason why it's probably difficult to perceive it as such a valuable asset is people easily understand Bitcoin as a valuable asset is because of their lack of like a deflationary token model, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin at its core is like this scarce asset from the get-go because it's capped,
Mm-hmm.
and then the introduction of new Bitcoins gets slowed down over
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's easy for us to understand that the value perspective from a scarcity level. So there's a new. I don't know if we've talked about it before in this podcast. The EIP
Yeah.
1559. Have we talked about
Yeah,
it?
we have, but very briefly in a different discussion. So
Well, we'll
EIP five.
briefly talk about it again. Like this is like could potentially, I guess, help people start to shift the new narrative, at least towards Ethereum. To now we're introducing potentially like some kind of scarcity element to it, right? As far
Yeah,
as like extracting some of the supply.
yeah, for sure. And EIP 1559 is a potential update to Ethereum where there's a burn mechanism added to it.
Yeah.
And the only problem with this burn mechanism is that during low activity, you're not burning as much. Instead, you're creating more. And so it's inflationary. During high activity, you're burning more than you're creating.
So if anything, it's just more of like a balancing mechanic.
Yeah,
Just
it evens out.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily designed to make Ethereum become, this model of
Yeah. It's not going to
here.
like go head on against Bitcoin's use case.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that. But ultimately, the reasoning behind it is to make gas more efficient, right?
Yeah.
And cost less. So agreed. Yeah, I don't think Ethereum's ever going to be perceived as like a more sought after asset than Bitcoin, just because Bitcoin doesn't do anything, but because there's a
see
limited amount
that is a
of,
feature of Bitcoin.
yeah,
Just because it doesn't do anything it's not a negative for Bitcoin. It has a specific use case, and the fact that it doesn't do anything is actually a very good thing. You don't want a completely diverse platform, because then you have situations like where there's tons of hacks, right? Because you're creating a bunch of smart contracts. So you need a very rigid and simple financial infrastructure, which is Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin fulfills its potential duty, right, being the world's reserve currency, it would be hard for anything to supersede that, even though Ethereum has way more use cases than you can think of.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's what a lot of this, I see that sentiment on the daily basis, especially from like the Ethereum holders, right? It's like, how is Ethereum still under $2,000? Like,
Yeah,
it makes no sense when like there's so much activity
I
happening.
agree with that.
Yeah, like it's just literally Ethereum is always the driver of like innovation. There's always
Yeah.
new happenings going on.
Everybody is copying Ethereum on their own chains, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, I understand there's a counter argument to it because of all this new innovation and these new like user use cases. It's just making that scalability dilemma more and more and more obvious.
Yeah.
So maybe that's enough to put people's, I guess, enthusiasm in check, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be off to the moon by now.
Yeah, for sure.
Ethereum is the fucking future.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
not the case, dude.
So let's go back to Visa and this announcement. And so we talked about dominoes. What are the next dominoes that you think could come from a Visa accepting USDC? And it's sort of alluded to in this article here at the very end. It says the easiest way to do that, according to Sheffield, is to enable digital wallets to issue Visa credentials so that their customers could access Visa's 70 million merchant network, integrate CBDCs, and use them to settle and move funds. So CBDCs is central bank digital currency. So what they're saying is that if now that Visa accepts USDC, well, it's like, well, why don't we enable accepting USDC at all Visa locations? I think that if this does happen, which it's likely to happen, then you're going to see a framework being built out from Visa, and now Apple is going to adopt this and use their Apple Pay and USDC. Now, all of a sudden, Apple and cryptocurrencies, that's definitely going to uptick Ethereum as well as Bitcoin, right, in the positive direction. This likely won't happen in this cycle, but in the next cycle, for sure. Visa and MasterCard all deep dive into crypto and accept crypto on the front end at the merchant location by the next cycle, for sure.
So if they're going to do this on Ethereum, which this article suggests, like how is that feasible? How do you execute 10,000 transactions a second?
So you bring up another potential domino. So Visa and MasterCard, they do roughly at its peak around 10,000 transactions per second. And that's like at, Black Friday event, right? And so the only way you could achieve that on Ethereum is through a sidechain, right? And so,
yeah, as far as we know, yeah.
So potentially Visa will probably onboard their 70 million merchants and roughly 200 or 300 million users onto a sidechain that Visa makes just for front end transactions. So now all the transactions are going to be extremely cheap, and it's going to be run by VUSDC or VUSD. So,
yeah, but from the from an interface perspective, it's going to be up to Visa to implement, I guess, this interaction, this communication to the already existing suite of terminals they have all around the world, right? So that you as an end user
it's
have
easy.
no idea.
It's going to be easy, dude. All terminals have a display. They show a QR code, and it's really going to be up to Apple and Google to educate the users. Say, hey, instead of using a credit card, use your digital wallet and then pay with almost zero fees and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you shouldn't even have to really mention the fees because the majority of the users don't even understand that there's a fee dilemma in the blockchain space, right?
Yeah.
They just want to be able to possess these crypto assets and easily, transact with them. They don't need to know that there's like a fee infrastructure on the back end happening. There's miners collecting these things to verify these transactions. They don't care.
Yeah.
They just want to know is if I hit my phone up to this display terminal, a couple
Yeah.
seconds later, transaction's done. I get to walk out the store with my bag of goods.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's as far as it should go. So yeah, Visa has to figure out if they're telling the world today that we are using Ethereum because it has a 7-year track record of security, because it has now like the regulatory approval of that being a security. So there's enough green light happenings over Ethereum's history. Because it's not like there's a lack of competition. They could have deployed on any other chain, right? But they chose Ethereum for whatever reason.
Yeah. So
they're gonna have to do something as far as like how to actually maintain using Ethereum as that settlement layer, but like maintain that same user experience all their millions of users are used to, right?
Yeah, I mean, Ethereum is contributing to solving this problem too, right? With ETH 2.0 and proof of stake. So they're contributing to solving it, right? And there's solutions out there, right? There's XDAI, there's Matic, there's all these side chains that solve the scaling problem. It's just a front end issue to onboard a bunch of people onto a side chain, right? You have to bridge your assets, then you can use a side chain. It's not the friendliest of experience. So one of the things I want to talk about is the nuance to this. The merchant right now is paying 3% per transaction on credit card fees. So what is 3%? So on brick and mortar transactions or brick and mortar locations, their margins are around 5 to 6%. So that means paying 3% on a transaction is 50% their bottom line, right? That's why there's a consortium for merchants right now. And right now they're having a problem with Visa and MasterCard and all these fees. So cryptocurrencies is inherently peer-to-peer. You're cutting out the middleman. And who's the biggest middleman on the planet, in the universe right now? Visa and MasterCard. So how does Visa add value to the merchants in a cryptocurrency world? I don't know. Now, it could be a tax thing. It could be like a security thing. It could be insurance. All these like other business like levels that merchants prefer to accept Visas and MasterCard. Find it hard to understand why merchants would want a third party in a peer-to-peer transaction world. So I'll leave you guys to come up with an answer to that. If you have a kind of an explanation as to why merchants might want to allow Visa to enable cryptocurrencies for them, let us know in the comments below. Follow us on Twitter at The Block Runner and also at MetaZone.io, and we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.